Many business leaders forget that we have actually 3 different forms of government, and the laws really begin for government investigations in that building right behind me, the Capitol. There are a couple of different Senate office buildings around here and House office buildings over there, but the Senate, of course, is where the laws begin. And of course, right behind us across the street is the United States Supreme Court. A lot of interest there today because Justice Ginsburg just passed away yesterday. And so there are many people here who are big fans of Justice Ginsburg, including me, a person who really fought for what she believed was right. And as a result of her passing, there's just a tremendous amount of interest because we have a presidential election coming up in less than 2 months. And the president, between now and those 2 months, will be announcing who the new Supreme Court justice is going to be, and we can expect Senate Majority Leader McConnell to hold hearings that will confirm the next Supreme Court justice that President Trump is sure to nominate relatively soon. But when there are 3 different branches of government, there is a lot of room for people who want to. There's a lot of room for laws, and those laws influence people who are in business who never really think that they could become a witness to a government investigation, the subject of a government investigation, or worse, the target of a government investigation. But all of those different activities can result in real challenges to an individual. It can result in a person being basically interrogated by a government attorney. The questions they answer will frequently be under oath. If they're not under oath, they will still potentially be used as evidence against an individual or perhaps somebody that the individual cares about. I am really opposed to big government intruding on so many ways into American way of life, and particularly because of the work that we do at Prison Professors, which is interact with people who have really come into the system, people who wish that they would have learned a little bit more about government investigations much earlier, but because they didn't, they ended up talking to government investigators, and those conversations frequently resulted in higher levels of exposure, generally with subpoenas, requesting emails, subpoenas, requesting documents, and that of course leads to more questions, and the way that a person responds to those questions can expose a person to enormous liability. So, I'm here in DC today. Actually, I was here yesterday to meet with a government contractor to talk about the dangers of government investigations. Certainly, I'm not a lawyer and I don't dispense legal advice. What I do is share what I've learned from, I joined our team. We share what we have learned from business executives and career people who found themselves starting off with a government investigation for really concepts that they didn't even understand, such as Sherman antitrust violation laws, or FCPA, Foreign Corrupt Practices Acts, or mail fraud, wire fraud, securities fraud. All of these, crimes that frequently begin with a government investigation. And the way that a person responds to that government investigation frequently puts that person in the crosshairs of government. It results in, for many of the people that we interact with, hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees every single month. It could result in many years of waiting to see what happens, and sadly for many, it grows or evolves or matures into federal prosecutors becoming interested in the case. Sometimes it can lead to a criminal charge. So we really believe if you are a business owner, if you employ people, if you use advertising or marketing, if you use the telephone to sell products, if you use the mail to sell products, if you sell products that have to do with fitness, or if you have telemarketing services, all of these different activities can lead or expose somebody to a government investigation, and that government investigation is a potential problem. So, we would highly recommend that you educate yourself when you're running your business, learn as much as you possibly can, learn steps that you might be able to take to avoid the type of outcome that has resulted in the loss of millions of dollars, the loss of many years of their life, that has resulted in the loss of liberty for many people with whom we interact at Prison Professors, and that we served time alongside inside of federal prisons across America. At Prison Professors, our objective is to really help people get the best possible outcome if they have been brought into the system. But we're also really committed to helping people avoid coming into the system at all. And the best way of doing that, I think, is to learn about the dangers of government investigations, to learn about these three different words of things like becoming a witness to an investigation, a subject of an investigation, or a target of investigation. If you ever are approached by a FBI agent, an attorney that works for any of the government agencies, or really any law enforcement officer, or if you learn that one of your employees has been approached by a government agency, you should be not only looking for really top tier legal counsel, but you should be educating yourself on what are the costs that are going to be associated with this investigation. What is the potential exposure that happens to people who find themselves in the system? Because a lot of guys don't really grasp how easily they can be involved in criminal activity, even though they had no intent. Using them, like for example, how many people really even understand, well, what is mail fraud? What is wire fraud? What is the Sherman Antitrust Act? What does collusion mean? How could I be vulnerable to the FCPA or to bribery charges or to wire fraud charges, or rather, money laundering charges? What is money laundering? I can tell you what money laundering is. It's basically putting money in the bank that came from an alleged criminal enterprise. If you don't know that you're involved in a criminal enterprise, but you transact business, you don't have to be trying to hide anything. There doesn't have to be anything nefarious about what you're doing. In fact, by being open and transparent about what you're doing, you could potentially expose yourself to bigger dangers. I'll give you an example. I had a client who ran a very large payday lending business. Did more than $1 billion in revenues every year. And he earned a significant income from his business. That he's been profiled a lot on Netflix's Dirty Money and on CNBC. I think American Greed also had a show on him. His name is Scott Tucker. And you can see an interview that I did with Scott on the Prison Professors YouTube channel. But the thing about Scott is his business, in his mind, operated within the letter of the law. Government investigators believed it didn't operate within the spirit of the law, and they went after him. And he didn't have a full understanding of the exposure of what could happen as a result of that government investigation and how it could transpire into the government freezing his assets and charging him with criminal activity. And now, as a result of the decisions that he made at the start of that government investigation, government seized, they gave a $1.3 billion judgment. It was the largest judgment ever from the Federal Trade Commission at the time for a business like his. He lost all of his assets. His wife lost all of her assets. And this is a person that was earning more than $100 million every year for more than 10 years. But because he didn't know that he was breaking the law, he lost everything, because everything was just run through the bank. And by running everything through the bank, it was very easy for the government to seize all of his assets after he became the subject of a government investigation and then a criminal prosecution. Sadly, in our line of work, where we work to teach and inspire people who come into the system, we learn and see a lot more than we would like to think that exists in America. Ruth Bader Ginsburg spoke a lot about fighting for what she believed it to be right. I believe it's right to help more Americans understand the risks and vulnerabilities of being exposed to potential government investigations. But since nobody's going to stop the government investigations in this era of big government, I think it's just as important to understand what are the consequences? What can I do to protect myself? How can I make sure that I am, or minimize the possibility or the potential of me being subject to a government investigation? I am Michael Santos with Prison Professors. I hope that you subscribe to our channel. We use our channel to teach and inspire people who are in custody, people who are in jail and prison, and we present our programs to people in prison all across the nation. But as somebody who served 26 years in federal prison, I have a real vested interest in fighting for human liberties, individual liberties. I speak a lot, in fact I wrote a book called Earning Freedom. I speak a lot about the importance of recognizing that we as human beings sometimes make decisions that we wish that we could take back. Sadly, in an era of mass incarceration, in an era where we incarcerate more people per capita than any other nation on earth, it is important to come to the nation's capital, where I am right now, to visit all branches of government. I'm on my way over to the White House right now, and bring more awareness to just to ordinary citizens, helping more people understand how easily they can become the subject of a government investigation, and helping them understand, well, what should I do? How can I work to make things better? How can I work to improve outcomes for the people that work for me, for my staff, for my team? How can I put processes and procedures in place to protect myself? I can offer you some of the guidance that I have learned, and that's really to be transparent, to document everything. It's one of the reasons that I've been so active over the past couple of months as I launched this new government investigations business to implement a CRM system where we really are documenting all of our processes and procedures of how people come into our system, of the different ways that we try to help people, the ways that we charge, the interactions and the conversations we've had with people. And the more information I provide, the more of a record I build. Now, of course, by doing that, I have to be certain that I'm not in violation of any laws, because I'm very transparent. You can ask me anything. I did 26 years in prison, and when you've done that much time inside of a prison, you understand how important liberty is. And so I don't do anything that would violate the law, but I definitely work to try and help as many people as possible understand how decisions that come out of that building behind me can result in a government investigation, can result in a government lawyer asking questions, can result in subpoena ducis tecum, where government investigators are asking for documents and emails that they want to review, can lead to depositions where somebody's sitting across the table from a government attorney, and the responses to that becomes evidence that sometimes can come back to haunt somebody. So again, the more a person learns about a government investigation early, the more a person empowers himself. And at Prison Professors, we want to empower business leaders and career career executives, or sales professionals, or marketers or people that write documents or write copy. We want them to understand the importance attached to the words that they put out that consumers or other business people may be reading. If government investigators believe that there is any type of deception, or if they can make it a case of any type of deception, that can result in a government inquiry. That can result in fines. That can result in injunctions. That can result in depositions. That can result in inquiries from the IRS. That can result in, so many different problems. It was Shakespeare who said, I don't know, was it Shakespeare who said about that spoke about the tangled web that we weave? In any event, it's certainly a saying that has become a cliche. But you can kind of imagine it, right? You start with a ball of yarn and you start pulling the string, and you pull enough strings, a government investigator can find something to make a case of. And again, it's not really, in the government investigator's eyes, it's not about justice. It's about getting a conviction. And that's what makes it un-American, because an individual can move forward with the best of intentions, but a government investigator can spin those words, can twist those words, can suborn perjury from other people, can induce people to say things that aren't necessarily accurate, but can help advance the government investigation. And as a result, a person just gets further and further into the labyrinth of problems that can bring them into the crosshairs of the Department of Justice. So learn as much as you can, particularly if you've ever been involved in the system. Learn as much as you can and do the best that you can to put processes and procedures in place. Document your strategies, and you're going to minimize the chances of being in the crosshairs of a government investigation. Visit us at prisonprofessors.com. Get as much free information as you can. If you want training, if you want to speak to some of our mitigation experts or learn a little bit more, we're always available to help. Thanks. I am Michael Santos with Prison Professors in Washington, D.C. on September the 19th, 2020, just touring the different branches of government on this historic weekend, which is the passing of the former Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a real champion of a person's ability to express themselves, a real passion of fighting for what's right. She certainly was a champion of women's rights, but I think also a champion of individual rights and individuals, the importance of individuals to fight for what they believe to be right. And I believe it is right to speak against the growth of big government and government investigations. And I believe that if you are in business, you should be learning a little bit more before you become brought into the crosshairs of a government investigation. Thank you.